Valerie Carter had always been careful about following the rules. She believed that order was important, especially for someone like her who worked hard to earn respect in a world that often made it difficult for people like her. On this particular afternoon, Valerie was driving home after a long day at work. She had spent hours listening to arguments, reviewing evidence, and making decisions that would affect people's lives. As a judge, she knew how important it was to remain calm and fair no matter what happened. But little did she know, her own life was about to become part of a story far bigger than anything she had seen in her courtroom. The weather matched her mood, gray and overcast. Dark clouds loomed overhead, threatening rain but not quite delivering. Valerie drove slowly through her neighborhood, a quiet suburban area where most people kept to themselves. It wasn't the kind of place where you'd expect trouble, which is why she felt surprised when she noticed flashing lights behind her. At first, she thought maybe another car had been pulled over nearby, but then she realized the lights were getting closer. They were meant for her. Confused, Valerie glanced at her rearview mirror. A police cruiser was right behind her, its red and blue lights reflecting off the windows of nearby houses. She hadn't been speeding or breaking any laws, so why was she being stopped? Taking a deep breath, she signaled and pulled over to the side of the road. Her heart began to race, though she tried to stay calm. This couldn't be serious, could it? As soon as she came to a complete stop, Valerie rolled down her window and waited. Moments later, a tall man in a police uniform approached her car. His name tag read Dawson, and his face looked stern. Officer Ryan Dawson adjusted his hat as he leaned down to peer into the vehicle. "License and registration, please," he said, his tone clipped and formal. Valerie nodded and reached into her purse to retrieve her wallet. She handed him her driver's license and then leaned forward to grab the registration from the glove compartment. All the while, she kept her movements slow and deliberate, knowing how important it was to appear cooperative during a traffic stop. Once she had everything ready, she held the documents out to him. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked politely. "I don't think I've done anything wrong." Ryan took the papers without saying a word. He studied them carefully, his eyes narrowing slightly as he compared the photo on the license to the woman sitting in front of him. Then, instead of handing them back, he stepped away from the car and returned to his cruiser. Valerie watched him go, feeling uneasy. Why hadn't he given her an explanation? What was going on? Minutes passed and the silence grew heavier. Valerie drummed her fingers lightly on the steering wheel, trying to distract herself. She glanced in her rearview mirror again and saw Ryan speaking into his radio. Whatever he was doing, it didn't look routine. Finally, he emerged from his car and walked back to hers. This time, his expression was even more serious than before. "Ms. Carter," he began, his voice firm. "This vehicle has been reported stolen." Valerie blinked, caught off guard by the accusation. "Stolen?" she repeated, her voice rising slightly. "That's impossible. This is my car. I bought it myself." Ryan crossed his arms over his chest. "According to our records, this car was flagged as stolen earlier today. Do you have proof of ownership?" Proof of ownership? Valerie couldn't believe what she was hearing. Of course, she owned the car. It had been hers for years. She pointed to the registration she had just handed him. "That should prove it," she said, her frustration growing. "It clearly states that I'm the registered owner." But Ryan shook his head. "I'll need to verify that information further. Until then, I'm going to have to ask you to step out of the vehicle." "Step out of the car?" Valerie felt anger bubbling up inside her. How dare he treat her this way? She was a judge, for goodness sake. Didn't he realize who she was? "Officer," she said, her voice sharp now, "you need to understand something. I am Judge Valerie Carter. I preside over cases every single day, and I know my rights. You're making a mistake here." Instead of backing down, Ryan seemed to bristle at her words. "Ma'am, your title doesn't exempt you from the law. If you refuse to comply, I'll be forced to take additional action." Valerie clenched, her jaw torn between indignation and fear. She wanted to argue, to demand answers, but she also knew better than to escalate the situation further. Reluctantly, she unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out of the car. The cool evening air hit her face as she stood there, arms crossed, glaring at the officer. By now, a small crowd had begun to gather. Neighbors walking their dogs paused to watch, curious about what was happening. Some drivers slowed down as they passed, craning their necks to get a better look. One person even pulled out their phone and started recording. Valerie noticed but tried to ignore them. The last thing she needed was for this embarrassing moment to end up online. Ryan called for backup, and within minutes, another patrol car arrived on the scene. 2 more officers joined him, flanking Valerie as if she were some dangerous criminal. She felt humiliated, standing there in her professional attire, a navy blue blazer and tailored pants, while strangers judged her. Was this really happening? Had this man honestly accused her of stealing her own car? As the minutes dragged on, Valerie's mind raced. Who could have reported her car as stolen, and why? It didn't make sense. Unless someone was trying to set her up. The thought sent a chill down her spine. She had made plenty of enemies over the years, particularly among those who opposed her rulings on discrimination cases. Could this be retaliation? Before she could dwell on the idea too much, one of the officers spoke up. "We're going to need you to come with us, ma'am," he said, "just until we sort this out." Valerie froze. "You're arresting me?" she asked, incredulous. "For what? Driving my own car?" "It's standard procedure," Ryan replied, avoiding eye contact. "We'll figure it out at the station." At that moment, Valerie realized she couldn't fight this alone. She needed help, and fast. Thinking quickly, she reached for her phone. "I'm calling my lawyer," she announced, holding the device up for all to see. "And trust me, this isn't over." The officers exchanged glances but didn't stop her. As Valerie dialed her friend Marcus, a skilled attorney known for taking on civil rights cases, she vowed to clear her name no matter what it took. Little did she know, this incident was only the beginning of a much larger battle, one that would test her strength, resilience, and faith in the justice system she had dedicated her life to serving. The video of Valerie's traffic stop spread like wildfire across social media within hours. A neighbor who had been walking their dog during the incident recorded everything: the flashing police lights, the heated exchange between Valerie and Officer Ryan Dawson, and the growing crowd of onlookers. By morning, the clip had millions of views, sparking outrage and debate nationwide. People were shocked by what they saw: a respected judge being treated like a criminal over something as absurd as owning her own car. Valerie woke up to a flood of notifications on her phone. Friends, colleagues, and even strangers were reaching out, offering support or asking for interviews. She scrolled through the comments under the viral video, feeling a mix of emotions. Some people praised her composure and demanded justice, while others defended the officer, saying he was just doing his job. The divide in opinions was clear, but one thing stood out. Everyone seemed to have strong feelings about what happened. Marcus arrived at Valerie's house early that morning, carrying a stack of papers and a laptop. He was already dressed in his usual sharp suit, ready to tackle whatever came next. "You're all over the news," he said, setting his things down on her dining table. "This has blown up faster than I expected," Valerie sighed, rubbing her temples. "I don't want this kind of attention, Marcus. I just want to prove I didn't do anything wrong." "I know," Marcus replied, his tone reassuring. "But we can use this to our advantage. Public pressure might force the department to take action. We need to move quickly before they try to sweep it under the rug." Together, they reviewed the footage and discussed their strategy. Valerie explained how confused and angry she felt during the stop, emphasizing that she had done nothing to provoke such treatment. Marcus listened carefully, jotting down notes. He knew they needed more than just the video. They needed hard evidence to show that Valerie was telling the truth. Meanwhile, Officer Ryan Dawson faced mounting criticism from both the public and his superiors. His captain called him into the office for a private meeting, where he was grilled about the details of the traffic stop. "Why did you accuse her without verifying the facts?" the captain asked, his voice firm. "You should have checked the registration thoroughly before escalating the situation." Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I followed protocol, he insisted. The system flagged the car as stolen. I couldn't ignore that. But you ignored her explanations, the captain shot back. She's a sitting judge, Ryan. You acted rashly, and now the whole country is watching us. Feeling cornered, Ryan tried to defend himself. It's not like I singled her out because of who she is. Anyone else would have gotten the same treatment if their car showed up as stolen. The captain shook his head. That's not how it looks to the public. And frankly, it doesn't look good internally either. Until this blows over, consider yourself on administrative leave. As Ryan left the station, he couldn't shake off the guilt gnawing at him. He replayed the events in his mind, wondering if he had made a mistake. Had he jumped to conclusions too quickly? Was there something deeper driving his actions? Something he hadn't wanted to admit? For the first time in his career, Ryan questioned whether he truly understood the impact of his decisions. Back at Valerie's house, Marcus suggested hiring a private investigator to dig deeper into the circumstances surrounding the false theft report. They agreed that someone must have tampered with the police database to frame Valerie, and finding out who was key to clearing her name. That's when Lisa Monroe entered the picture. Lisa was a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving tough cases. When Marcus reached out to her, she immediately sensed the importance of the situation. This isn't just about Valerie, Lisa said after hearing the details. It's about exposing whoever's trying to silence her. Count me in. Over the next few days, Lisa worked tirelessly to uncover the truth. She started by reviewing the police database logs, looking for any unusual activity around the time the false report was filed. It wasn't easy. These systems were designed to be secure, but Lisa was persistent. Late one night, she finally found what she was looking for: a digital trail leading to a shadowy online group known for targeting civil rights advocates. Lisa shared her findings with Valerie and Marcus, explaining that the group had ties to extremist ideologies. They believed Valerie's rulings on discrimination cases threatened their agenda, so they decided to discredit her. Framing her for car theft was meant to embarrass her publicly and undermine her authority as a judge. This is bigger than we thought, Marcus said, frowning as he read through Lisa's report. Lisa Monroe was not someone who gave up easily. Once she set her mind to solving a case, she pursued every lead until the truth came to light. For Valerie's situation, Lisa knew that time was critical. The longer the false theft report went, unchallenged, the more damage it could do to Valerie's reputation, and the harder it would be to expose the real culprits behind the scheme. So Lisa worked late into the night, piecing together clues and following digital trails that most people wouldn't even know existed. The first breakthrough came when Lisa discovered irregularities in the police database logs. Someone had accessed the system using stolen credentials just minutes before Valerie was pulled over. Whoever it was had manually entered the false report about the stolen car. This wasn't a random act. It was deliberate and calculated. But why target Valerie? And who stood to gain from discrediting her? Lisa dug deeper, tracing the IP address used to access the database. It led her to a server located in a remote area, but that wasn't the end of the trail. It was only the beginning. With some technical expertise, Lisa managed to infiltrate the server and found evidence linking it to a far-right extremist group. These were individuals known for their hatred of progressive policies and anyone advocating for equality. They operated online under aliases, spreading propaganda and planning attacks against public figures they deemed enemies. Valerie's name appeared repeatedly in encrypted chat logs Lisa uncovered. The group referred to her as a threat because of her recent rulings against discriminatory practices in housing and employment. One message stood out: "We need to take her down before she ruins everything." Another member suggested framing her for a crime so absurd that no one would believe her innocence. That's when Lisa realized this wasn't just about Valerie. It was part of a larger pattern of intimidation aimed at silencing advocates for justice. When Lisa shared her findings with Valerie and Marcus, the gravity of the situation hit them all. "These people aren't playing games," Lisa said, showing them screenshots of the chats. "They're organized, dangerous, and willing to go to great lengths to protect their agenda." Valerie felt a chill run down her spine. She had always known there were people who opposed her work, but she never imagined they would stoop to such extremes. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear building inside her. Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Everything we do next has to be strategic," he replied. "If we expose this group, we can not only clear your name, but also stop them from targeting others." With Lisa's evidence in hand, they began preparing their case. Marcus drafted legal documents outlining the conspiracy and filed a formal complaint against the police department for failing to verify the false report. He also reached out to journalists he trusted, ensuring the story would reach the right audiences without being sensationalized. Meanwhile, Lisa continued monitoring the group's activities, gathering more proof to strengthen their position. As word spread about the investigation, Valerie became both a symbol of resilience and a target of ridicule. Some people praised her courage, calling her a hero for standing up against injustice. Others dismissed her claims, accusing her of exaggerating the situation or seeking attention. Online trolls flooded social media with hateful comments, many of them racially charged. Despite the negativity, Valerie refused to back down. She leaned on her support system, Marcus, Lisa, and close friends, to keep her spirits high. One evening, as Valerie scrolled through yet another wave of comments, she paused on a post from a young woman named Keisha. "Judge Carter, I see you," the comment read. "You're fighting for all of us, don't let them win." Tears welled up in Valerie's eyes as she read those words. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. If her struggle could inspire even one person to believe in fairness and equality, then it was worth it. While Valerie focused on staying strong, Ryan Dawson wrestled with his conscience. Since being placed on administrative leave, he had spent hours replaying the traffic stop in his mind. He couldn't shake the image of Valerie standing beside her car, looking humiliated and angry. Was he truly wrong to accuse her? Or had he simply been doing his job? Ryan decided to revisit the details of the case, poring over the reports and evidence. As he studied the registration documents again, something caught his eye. A small discrepancy in the vehicle identification number, VN. At first glance, it seemed minor, but upon closer inspection, it became clear that the VIN listed in the false report didn't match Valerie's car. How had he missed this before? Had he been too quick to judge? Determined to make things right, Ryan contacted his former colleagues, urging them to re-examine the case. "I think I made a mistake," he admitted reluctantly. "We need to clear Judge Carter's name." His confession surprised everyone, including himself. Admitting fault wasn't easy, especially for someone in law enforcement, but Ryan knew it was the right thing to do. Slowly, he began reaching out to community leaders, offering to participate in discussions about bias and accountability within policing. It was a small step, but it marked the beginning of his journey toward redemption. Back in Lisa's makeshift office, the investigation took another turn when she stumbled upon plans for future attacks. The extremist group wasn't content with targeting Valerie. They had lists of other judges, activists, and politicians marked for similar smear campaigns. Lisa immediately alerted Marcus, who included this information in their legal filings. Now the stakes were higher than ever. Exposing the group wasn't just about Valerie anymore. It was about protecting countless others from becoming victims of their hatred. As the days passed, Valerie grew more determined to see the case through. She attended town hall meetings, speaking openly about her experience and the importance of addressing systemic issues within law enforcement. Her speeches resonated with many, sparking conversations about racism, privilege, and the need for reform. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, Valerie felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer just fighting for herself. She was fighting for justice on behalf of everyone who believed in a fairer world. Little did she know the battle was far from over. The extremist group, realizing they were being exposed, started retaliating. Threats poured in, forcing Valerie to increase her security measures. Yet she refused to live in fear. With Marcus by her side and Lisa working tirelessly behind the scenes, Valerie prepared to confront the conspirators head-on. What started as a simple traffic stop had evolved into a fight for truth, accountability, and change. A fight that would test her strength, resilience, and faith in humanity like never before. The trial began on a cold Monday morning, drawing national attention. Journalists lined up outside the courthouse hours before the proceedings started, eager to report on what many were calling the case of the decade. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with murmurs as people took their seats. On one side sat Valerie Carter, flanked by Marcus, her lawyer, and Lisa, the private investigator whose work had uncovered the conspiracy. On the other side were the defendants, members of the extremist group accused of orchestrating the false theft report and targeting Valerie. Their presence loomed large, but Valerie refused to let fear or anger cloud her focus. As the judge entered the room and called for order, silence fell over the crowd. The prosecution team presented its opening statement, laying out the timeline of events and the evidence against the defendants. They explained how the group had hacked into the police database, framed Valerie, and planned similar attacks on other public figures advocating for equality. The encrypted chat logs Lisa had discovered played a key role, showing explicit discussions about discrediting Valerie and undermining her authority as a judge. Valerie listened intently, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Hearing the details of the plot against her was unsettling, but she reminded herself why she was here. Not just to clear her name, but to hold these individuals accountable for their actions. She glanced at Marcus, who gave her an encouraging nod. He had prepared her well for this moment, ensuring she understood the importance of staying calm and composed throughout the trial. When it was time for testimony, Valerie took the stand first. Dressed professionally and speaking with clarity, she recounted the events of the traffic stop. She described how Officer Ryan Dawson had pulled her over, accused her of stealing her own car, and ignored her explanations despite her cooperation. Her voice remained steady, even as she recalled the humiliation of being treated like a criminal in front of her neighbors. "I'm a judge," she said, addressing the jury. "I've spent my career fighting for fairness and justice. To be targeted in this way felt like an attack not only on me, but on everything I stand for." Her words resonated deeply with those in the courtroom. Several jurors nodded thoughtfully, while reporters scribbled notes furiously. When the defense cross-examined her, they tried to poke holes in her story, suggesting she might have misunderstood the officer's intentions. But Valerie stood firm, answering each question with precision and poise. Next, Lisa Monroe took the stand. As a seasoned investigator, she walked the jury through her findings step by step. Using visual aids, she demonstrated how the hackers had accessed the police database and planted the false report. She highlighted anomalies in the vehicle identification number, VIN, and showed screenshots of the chat logs implicating the defendants. Her presentation was thorough and compelling, leaving little room for doubt about the group's involvement. The defense argued that the evidence wasn't conclusive, claiming someone else could have used the same server to frame Valerie. They also questioned Lisa's methods, insinuating that she might have tampered with the data. But Lisa remained unfazed, calmly refuting their claims with technical expertise and meticulous documentation. By the time she stepped down from the stand, the prosecution's case seemed stronger than ever. Meanwhile, Ryan Dawson appeared as a witness for the prosecution. His testimony marked a turning point in the trial. Sitting nervously on the stand, he admitted to mishandling the traffic stop and failing to verify the facts before accusing Valerie. "I acted too quickly," he said, his voice tinged with regret. "I didn't give Judge Carter a fair chance to explain herself. Looking back, I realize I was influenced by biases I didn't fully understand." His confession shocked the courtroom. Some spectators whispered angrily, feeling betrayed by his earlier behavior. Others nodded approvingly, recognizing the courage it took for him to admit fault publicly. For Valerie, hearing Ryan's words brought mixed emotions. While she appreciated his honesty, she couldn't forget the harm his actions had caused. Still, she hoped his admission would serve as a catalyst for change within law enforcement. As the trial progressed, the prosecution called additional witnesses, including cybersecurity experts and victims of the group's previous smear campaigns. Each testimony added another layer to the case, painting a clear picture of the defendant's malicious intent. One witness, a housing advocate named Elena, tearfully recounted how the group had spread lies about her online, damaging her reputation and jeopardizing her career. Her story underscored the broader implications of the conspiracy, showing that Valerie was far from alone in facing such threats. The defense fought back fiercely, attempting to discredit the evidence and cast doubt on the prosecution's narrative. They argued that the chat logs were circumstantial and that the prosecution lacked direct proof tying the defendants to the crime. But their efforts fell flat as Marcus skillfully dismantled their arguments during rebuttals. With each objection sustained and each point countered, the tide turned further in favor of the prosecution. Outside the courtroom, public support for Valerie continued to grow. Protesters gathered daily, holding signs that read "Justice for Judge Carter" and "End Systemic Bias." Social media campaigns amplified their voices, keeping the pressure on authorities to deliver a fair verdict. Even celebrities and politicians weighed in, praising Valerie's bravery and calling for accountability. Back inside, closing arguments brought the trial to its climax. Marcus delivered a passionate speech, urging the jury to consider not only the evidence but also the wider implications of the case. "This isn't just about one woman wrongfully accused," he said. "It's about exposing a dangerous ideology that seeks to silence anyone who stands up for equality. If we don't act now, who will they target next?" The defense's closing argument lacked the same conviction. They reiterated their claims of insufficient evidence but struggled to counter the overwhelming weight of the prosecution's case. When the judge instructed the jury to deliberate, there was a palpable sense that justice might finally prevail. For Valerie, waiting for the verdict was agonizing. She returned home each night exhausted but hopeful, leaning on Marcus and Lisa for support. Together, they reflected on how far they'd come since that fateful traffic stop. What had started as a personal ordeal had transformed into a fight for systemic change, a fight that transcended individual grievances and touched the lives of countless others. Finally, after days of deliberation, the jury reached a decision. The courtroom filled once again, buzzing with anticipation. As the foreperson stood to announce the verdict, Valerie held her breath, steeling herself for whatever came next. Whatever the outcome, she knew she had already made a difference simply by refusing to stay silent. And sometimes that was the most powerful form of justice of all. The jury foreperson's voice echoed through the courtroom as everyone leaned forward, holding their breath. "We find the defendants guilty on all counts," they announced firmly. For a brief moment, silence filled the room before erupting into murmurs and gasps. Valerie exhaled deeply, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. It was over. After weeks of tension, uncertainty, and relentless effort, justice had been served. Marcus turned to Valerie, his face breaking into a wide smile. "You did it," he said quietly, gripping her hand tightly. Lisa, seated beside them, nodded with quiet satisfaction. Though the verdict didn't undo the pain or humiliation Valerie had endured, it validated her fight and exposed the truth behind the conspiracy. The extremist group members were led out of the courtroom, their expressions ranging from anger to defeat. They would face sentencing soon, but for now, the focus shifted to what came next. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around Valerie, eager for her reaction. Cameras flashed as microphones were thrust toward her, but she remained composed. "This victory isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who believes in fairness and equality," she began, her voice steady and strong. "What happened to me was wrong, but it also showed us how far we still have to go. We must continue, working together to root out bias and ensure that no one else has to endure what I went through." Her words resonated deeply, earning applause from the crowd gathered outside. Supporters held up signs reading, "Justice prevails," and "Thank you, Judge Carter." Among them was Keisha, the young woman whose comment had touched Valerie during darker days. When their eyes met, Keisha smiled warmly, giving a small wave. Valerie returned the gesture, grateful for the reminder of why this fight mattered so much. As the media frenzy subsided, Valerie drove home alone, savoring the quiet solitude She glanced at the passenger seat where her registration papers had once rested, the same ones Ryan Dawson had doubted. Now, there was no question about her ownership of the car or her integrity. Pulling into her driveway, she stepped out and stood for a moment looking at the silver sedan bathed in the soft glow of twilight. It felt like more than just a vehicle. It represented survival, resilience, and vindication. Later that evening, Valerie sat in her living room flipping through messages of support from friends, colleagues, and strangers alike. One message caught her eye, a note from Ryan Dawson. In it, he apologized again for his role in the incident and expressed hope that his actions moving forward could help rebuild trust between law enforcement and marginalized communities. Though forgiveness wouldn't come easily, Valerie appreciated his sincerity. Change often started with accountability, and Ryan's willingness to confront his mistakes gave her hope for progress. Over the following weeks, Valerie threw herself back into her work, more determined than ever to advocate for reform. She partnered with organizations focused on addressing systemic racism within policing and legal systems. Her experience became a cornerstone of speeches she delivered nationwide, emphasizing the importance of listening, learning, and taking action against prejudice. People listened, not only because of her title as a judge, but because of the authenticity and courage she brought to every conversation. Ryan Dawson, meanwhile, embarked on his own journey of redemption. He joined community outreach programs, aimed at fostering understanding between police officers and the people they served. At first, skepticism followed him wherever he went. Many doubted whether someone with his history could truly change. But Ryan persisted, attending workshops, engaging in difficult conversations, and volunteering his time to mentor young officers. Slowly, he began earning back some measure of respect, not for himself, but for the institution he hoped to improve. Lisa. Monroe continued her work as an investigator, taking on cases involving corruption and injustice. The success of Valerie's trial inspired her to push harder, knowing firsthand the impact of uncovering hidden truths. She kept in touch with Valerie and Marcus, forming a bond that went beyond professional collaboration. Together, they celebrated victories and supported each other through setbacks, united by their shared commitment to justice. Months later, Valerie found herself standing outside the courthouse once again. This time, however, she wasn't there for a trial. Instead, she attended a ceremony honoring individuals who had made significant contributions to advancing civil rights. As she accepted an award for her advocacy work, Valerie reflected on how much had changed since that fateful traffic stop. What had started as a personal nightmare had become a catalyst for widespread awareness and reform. Looking out at the audience, Valerie saw faces full of hope and determination. There were activists, lawyers, law enforcement officials, and ordinary citizens, all united by a desire to create a better world. She ended her speech with a simple yet powerful message. Justice isn't something we achieve overnight. It's a journey, one step at a time. And while none of us can do everything, all of us can do something. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Valerie walked to her car. She paused for a moment, glancing back at the courthouse. Its towering pillars seemed to stand taller tonight, embodying the ideals she fought for daily. With a deep breath, she climbed into her silver sedan and drove off, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Though the road to true equality remained long and winding, Valerie knew she wasn't walking it alone. Countless others joined her, people like Marcus, Lisa, Ryan, and even strangers she might never meet. Together, they formed a collective force striving for fairness, accountability, and lasting change. And in that unity, Valerie found not only strength but also peace. The story of the white officer accusing a black female judge of stealing her own car during a traffic stop had sparked outrage, division, and ultimately transformation. It reminded everyone that even in moments of darkness, light could emerge, if people refused to stay silent. For Valerie Carter, this realization wasn't just a conclusion to her ordeal, it was a promise to keep fighting, no matter what came next.